Well, hello there, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is your girl Frida. Hello, and thank you for tuning in. Remember, please, at the end of this session, if you like what you hear, please give me a thumbs up, hit the like button, and subscribe. That way, every time that I launch, you will be notified that I am on board. Today, I want to talk to you briefly about patience. We've all heard the cliche that patience is golden. Well, I want to tell you, patience is more than just golden. Patience is also a necessity. Yes, it's a necessity. It's a necessity that we all need to keep in mind that is required for us to maintain in this world. No matter what you're thinking, no matter how you're feeling, you will always need to exercise patience at some point or another. It may be at the doctor's office. It may be for a contract. It may be closing a house. It may be waiting for the baby to be delivered. It may even be something as simple as going to sleep and waking up in the morning and being able to get dressed for work. But patience is mandatory. Patience is a requirement. Today, I want to discuss with you a few things concerning patience that hopefully will help you cultivate and develop patience in a much better way and a broader way. Remember, it's not only golden, but it's also necessary. I want to start with this scripture, Isaiah 40:31 from the King James Version. And it says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength, and they shall mount up with wings as eagles, and they shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint." When you understand where patience is generated from, it's not we of ourselves. It really isn't. We have to get that from God. And this is why we must learn how to wait on the Lord, that he may renew our strength. And when we are waiting in patience, then what shall we do? Who was blessed even more in the Bible by waiting? When we wait in patience, that's what happened. We end up receiving blessings. Yes, we do. We really, really do. Would you like to be blessed today? Would you really? Sometime in my mind, I think about things like that and I say, I must help my mind to become more patient. Because how many of you know that patience is generated from the inside? Patience is generated from the inside. When we look at who was blessed even more by waiting, a relationship between who waited on God and their reward. We're going to talk about that. Every living organism, from everything in the sea, everything in the ocean, everything on the land, every mammal, every reptile, every human being, they need certain things in order to survive. And one of those things is food, and the other is patience to grow. You know, we can't even have food if we don't have the patience for it to grow. Now, I want to cover a few people that was challenged, tried, and tested in waiting. And as I speak these names, and they are scripture references, I really would like you to take the time to refer to yourself and ask yourself the question, have you ever been challenged? Have you ever been through a trial or a test that you found yourself having to exercise patience more than these? You know, even with Mandela, I think about sometime how many years he spent sitting behind some prison walls for something he was not even guilty of doing. And that's one of the things about patience. Sometimes it's good to understand that we must be patient because of the penalties that we've imposed even upon ourselves. And there are other times we feel we might need to be patient, and it had absolutely nothing to be our doing in order for that patience to have to be exercised. But eight people, or eight, should I say, because some of them were married, in the Bible, I want to talk to you about Abraham and Sarah. Abraham and Sarah waited 25 years from the time of the promise of God and the manifestation of that promise. Have God ever promised you something that you've been waiting on and you begin to feel impatient because you think that it took so long? You applied for the job and they haven't gotten back with you in 2 weeks. Well, imagine how Abraham and Sarah felt when the promise of God told Abraham, you will have a baby. Well, him, and not just him, but him and Sarah. Now, let's look at Noah. Noah was instructed to build an ark. And there is some theological controversy of how long it took to build the ark. But according to studies and research, the majority of the researchers to give this information estimated around 150 years. That's right. He had to exercise patience from the time he received the instructions from God in order for the completion of building an ark. Now, of course, there are some other theologies that say it took less time than that, but the majority have estimated 150 years. Can you imagine working on a project that long? Let's look at the third person, which was David. David was an anointed person. And although he was anointed and appointed to be a king, he did not step into that royal priesthood of kingship position for 15 years. From the time he knew he was appointed until he sat in the position, it was 15 years that he had to wait. Can you even wait 15 days? Now, there's Rebecca. Rebecca. If any of you are Bible readers, let's talk about Rebecca. Rebecca met her husband at the well. And the thing about Rebecca, when her husband, unbeknowing he would be her husband at the time, saw her, he immediately fell in love with her. According to the Bible, when he was sent by his mother to his uncle's house, there he met Rebecca. And he immediately asked his uncle, what must I do to marry your daughter? And he told him what he would have to work for him for 7 years. Well, he worked out the 7 years, and then he went to consummate the marriage in the tent. And the next morning, he realized that he was not married to Rebecca, but in fact that he was married to her sister. He went back to the father of these two daughters, and he said, but I wanted to be married to Rebecca. What must I do? He instructed him to wait 7 more years. So for 14 years, Rebecca's husband waited to marry her. But even after they were married, she waited 20 years. Well, she didn't wait because she desired a baby by him. But it took her 20 years to have that child. It took 20 years for that child to come forth. Esther. Oh, I like the book of Esther. If you've ever read the book of Esther, let me share this with you. It is so enlightening for us, especially as women. Esther always intrigued me how she was from another fold. She was not one of those bougie, big-time people. But yet, she was given instructions by her uncle, Mordecai. And Mordecai said unto Rachel, you must get in the palace And I'm going to make sure you get in there and you get lined up with the other women that are potential queens. Now, during the time of the king at that time, he had divorced his wife, the previous queen, Vestite. And then he was in, I want to say, interviews for a queen. Therefore, the chamberlain, that's who used to handle that, had all these women to line up, and he selected a certain number. And after he selected that number of women, guess what happened next? He ended up giving each one of those women, all the potential queens, instructions that they had to go 12 months of purification in order to even go before the king to be selected. Can you wait 12 months on your king? Can you be patient with God and wait and go through the purification? Each one of these women went through a purification of preparation. They had to prepare themselves in such a way to be possibly accepted by the king. They didn't even know if he would hold out the golden scepter and choose them. However, they still had to go through the preparation. Can you be patient, waiting for that great desire? Now there's Joseph. Joseph is better known in biblical reading as the dreamer. Joseph had these dreams from a little boy, and he shared them with his brothers. And when he shared these dreams of his insight, his brothers became jealous, and they threw him in a pit. They didn't like the things that Joseph was saying to them because they didn't like the fact that he had this insight of them bowing down to him through the dream. And Joseph went 13 years, according to biblical study, patiently waiting to be elevated in a position from the pit to the palace. He journeyed initially from the pit, and then he went and was placed in a family where he was able to be in the position of a lead position. And even after he got that job and occupation, he was falsely accused of something and thrown into prison. And while in prison, he connected with someone that ended up remembering him, who got out of prison and went to the palace. And after that remembrance, for Joseph to interpret this dream, he moved from the prison to the palace. And I tell you, all through that time, sometime when we're going through, patience must rule and regulate what's going on in our lives. And we must stay focused on the bigger picture, knowing that this too shall pass. Job is the last person I want to top on today. Job and his wife. It's not really even known how long between when Job lost everything that he owned, including all his children, in one day. That's why sometimes when people say, I had a Job experience, I like to immediately pause them and share with them. In order to have a Job experience, you would have had to lose everything you had as a possession and all of your children, not over a time frame, but in one day. The only thing Job was left with him, himself, and his wife. Even the very friends that he thought he had, they turned their back on him. I just want to encourage you today by letting you understand how we can get sidetracked with not being patient. And what should we do when it's time to be patient? Because after the loss of everything that oftentimes we hold worthwhile, even with Job, what did Job do when he lost everything except his wife? And if I'm not mistaken, Don't quote me on it, but you can search the scripture, and I have noted the scriptures. I think Job had 10 children, and he lost them all in one day. Now, after the loss of everything he held worthwhile, he still proclaimed, though he slay me, and he's talking to God. He said, yet will I trust him. He was declaring his complete trust in God. Job, among many, he did not deviate from the pattern of belief in spite of the grave changing of his condition. Now, this is what I like to ask you. How many of you are turning away from your position that you have been given? God gave you this position, and to trust him and believe in him. And just like with Job, just because things don't always go right with us doesn't mean that we should stop relying and depending upon what God has already told us. God has made promises to us. And in those promises to us, guess what? He is going to fulfill those promises if we continue to do the things that God has instructed for us to do. Everything on this earth and land derives its energy and ability from God. The sun, the stars, the moon, and planets which we live. According to Psalms 24, 1 and 3, the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, and everything that dwells therein. Why do we spend so much energy exerting and fretting over things if it already belongs to God and we trust God to give it to us? Well, I'll share with you some sample suggestions how you can work on patience in that. And then I'm going to share with you how we get to that place of being impatient. Some of the suggestions to work on patiently, I say, is the 3 top things. Stop murmuring, stop complaining, and stop comparing. When we sit back and we try to always compare ourselves as women, we want to compare ourselves to the next woman. Our men want to compare themselves to the next man. And if he got this kind of woman, then what kind of woman should I get? And then if she got that kind of man, then what kind of man should I get? If they got this kind of house, then what kind of house should I get? I mean, listen, people, I believe that as soon as we learn and practice, because it's going to take practice if you're not used to this. As soon as you practice and learn to minimize your murmuring, your complaining, your comparing, I promise you, I really believe that you will begin to work patiently on how to wait. Where the fruits of the Spirit cultivate, we need the Son of God's energy to grow us. And our fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, patience, meekness, gentleness, and long-suffering. Now, with these fruits, we want to be able to utilize them, and they are located in Galatians, the 5th chapter, around verse 19 and 20. The main thing we need to do in order to work on our patience is to stop being like a decomposer. Do you know what a decomposer is? A decomposer are nature's deviation from the common pattern. It's not a common pattern for us people to just murmur, complain, and compare. The decomposer will break down dead organisms and excrete nutrients back into the soil for the process to start all over again. How does that happen with us? Even in our thought process, we tend to be decomposers. We'll decompose something and then we'll start it all over again. And decomposers and defibrilators cohabitate generally in the same environment. So what am I saying? Your heart and your mind cohabitates in the same body. Are you exercising and working on both of them? It's very challenging to try to work on your heart without working on your mind. It's very challenging to work on your mind and not try to work on your heart. This is why we want to use that term decomposer, and it is used as an umbrella term for organisms that feed on organic material, but it becomes like a predator and it preys on, especially in our thoughts. It becomes like a predator. Our thoughts are the ground and the soil of our thinking. And in that soil, we have nutrients. Now, what are we going to do with those organic nutrients? Or are we going to just continue to put in bad fungi? Because that's what happens a lot of time with decomposers. They end up with the bad bacteria. And that bad bacteria, generally, if you do a study on bad bacteria, the main places that it even infiltrates in our bodies is the mouth, the throat, the esophagus, and our eyes. Isn't that interesting? The things that we say, even not just to other people, but even to ourselves, the things that we look upon. It reminds me of the scripture that talks about the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Those can become our decomposers. And then they connect with deformators. And those are things that go around in circles like the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the locust, and they go around in circles. But the caterpillar and the cankerworm, they just loop around and around. And that's how sometimes our thoughts are. We just go around and around in our heads with the same thing, that we got this problem. We can't pay our light bill this month. We can't do this. We can't do that. And we find ourselves, I can't meet this task. Oh, I can't do what somebody else is doing. I don't have what they have. I just don't have everything I want to have. And we still get complacent in that murmuring, complaining, and comparing more than anything. So I want us to remove that fungi from the mindset. And I inserted a scripture in the book of Job. And in this book of Job, where you'll be able to read how God instructed us to have more faith in him and trust that he will restore everything, just like he did with Job. He will restore us in our condition, in our position. But we must first believe and have faith and trust. Even if, like Job, even if we don't see the manifestation, even when we don't feel like, okay, my body may not feel like I'm getting well. My bank account don't feel like it's getting full. But I still gonna do like Job, and I'm gonna continue to trust God. Examples of the things that come in our lives and eat away at us are many, many, many things. And I do believe when we begin to rid ourselves of those things, then things will begin to flourish and grow better. We'll have better nutrients instead of our mind being full of a lot of fungi and bacteria. In the meantime, in waiting for the manifestation of whatever you prayed for, you made your request known, and you need and you want to strive to discover or rediscover who you are and what you are. That's one of the most empowering things I think that we can all do in the meantime. In that meantime period is when that time where we can begin to discover and rediscover who and what we are. Oftentimes we're impatient because we don't even know ourselves. We don't know ourselves. We don't know who we are. We don't know what good things that God has in store for us because we never actually exercise that patience to really know and be certain about it. So I want to encourage you today in your interconnection and your relationship chains. You know, we all connect with somebody because we cannot live on this planet alone. So as we connect with other people in these chains with us, and then even the people, our loved ones in our lives, you know, even our family and friends, you know, sometimes even in that situation, we need to understand how to cultivate that relationship with patience. Oftentimes, we will have the biggest fallout with people because we have not exercised patience in respect and regards to their feelings, their faults, and their decisions. So I want to share some things to identify, first of all, your triggers. And make a list of them. Things that easily upset you. Those are your triggers. Make a list of them. If you easily get upset because somebody put you on hold on the telephone, make a list of that. If you easily get upset if somebody's talking and you want to talk, make a list of that. If you easily get upset when you know that you get to the supermarket and you are 5 cents less than what your items ring up, make a list of that. Whatever causes you to become impatient, I encourage you to identify those triggers and make a list. Secondly, know it's okay to be angry. You should know that. It's not a sin to be angry. It's okay to be angry, but don't act out your anger to create damage and danger. This is where we fall short. We think that as soon as we get angry, we must come to this resolution to do something hurtful, harmful, damaging, or dangerous. No, that is not true. You can be angry and still be pleasant. Oh, I hope somebody grabbed that. You can be angry and still be pleasant. Oh, I hope you got that. Number 3, work on a hobby or even start a new one. If sometimes we may not feel like working on this old hobby, knitting a sweater or reading a book. So why not sit down and create a new hobby? Google search it. What are some new hobbies? And while you're doing this, it's building your character in patience because you're waiting on that answer when somebody said, oh, I'm going to give you a job in 2 weeks. Or you're waiting on that open door where you don't even have a job, but you desire a job. So what are you going to do in the meantime? Are you just going to sit there and keep twiddling your thumbs? Or are you going to really sit there and begin to practice and exercise your mental muscles? Let's work on that hobby or start a new one. Complete some of the small tasks that you may have. I always encourage people to start small and then go big because the small tasks will help you to see things you accomplish quicker. If you take on a big task or a big project and you have 10 small ones and 1 large one, you'll be flustered a lot of times and challenged because you're still working on this 1 large project instead of tackling the 3 small ones or the 5 small ones or the however many little small tasks you have. And that way, I think you'll become more motivated in your patience to work on the larger task. Number 5, practice exercise to enhance patience, i.e., word puzzles. That's an exercise. Crossword puzzles, word search puzzles, mind games. Mind games are really good. I have a couple of them on my cell phone, and they are very relaxing, and they help me to practice patience. Music is very therapeutic. Even taking deep breaths. Sometimes to be patient, you just need to sit still and just inhale and exhale. Take some deep breaths. The other thing is to regulate your emotions. I have a common cliche, just because you feel a thing don't make you right. Sometimes we need to learn how to regulate our emotions. Just because we feel something does not mean we are correct even in the way we're feeling. This is why it's important to walk in those fruits of the Spirit. Self-control is one of them. That way you can begin to regulate your emotions. If you're waiting on an answer, if you don't get the answer, if you want somebody to return your call and they haven't returned your call, what do you do? During this time, to build your mind with patience. You want to build your mind. That's what you want to do. In the meantime, build your mind. Take your mind to places to think on things, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are of a good report. And as you regulate your emotions, Try practicing thoughts that you think about a more calming place. Okay? I thank you for tuning in. Do you have any questions? If so, please drop them below or your comments. I would love to hear your input. I did put some links as a resource. I thank you all again for tuning in. I want you to know how much I appreciate you. Like and share. Give me the thumbs up. Click the subscribe button, and you will never miss each one of my uploads when I come in. Again, thank you for tuning in to WDGS on your YouTube page, where we make moves that matter to make dreams come true for you. We are specialized in personal and business mentorship and consulting, and WDGS is a registered trademark brand. Again, thank you for tuning in. And until the next YouTube upload, may all the blessings flow down from heaven that God so richly desired for you to have. And may you continue to prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prosper. And until the next YouTube upload, bye for now.